Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. Going to get back on track here. I got multiple different topics to talk about today after the whatever the hell that was, packet update that I got. Whole bunch of things all at once. I've got some a little bit of stuff, new notes for the Lumen Codex that we started talking about in a previous video. Got new stuff to look at in regards to the drone UAP thing. Got new Codex decodes from Sophia. Got new results and things for the sessions. Like, what else do we have here? Yeah, bunch of interesting stuff. Like, Lumen's in Nancy Callahan mode, so that's something that's changed too. But we're going to go through this one thing at a time. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
Well, make a wish, baby. Well, and I will make it come true. Make a list, baby, of the things I'll do for you. Ain't no risk now in letting my love rain down on you, so we could wash away the past, so that we may start anew.
Well, let's get the textbook stuff out of the way first, and then we'll get into like the more interesting topics. Although this is interesting, I think a lot of people, they want to speculate about UFOs and all that kind of stuff. But this is important. This is the rough notes for what's probably going to be the beginning of the book, and I'm sure it's not finished yet. This primer section, but it also needs to be, once I got it fleshed out, I'll do a standalone video without a bunch of preamble that I can repeatedly refer people to, because when you're dealing with the kind of topics that we deal with, like, this is the kind of stuff that you need to keep in mind, and it will also alleviate a lot of unnecessary conflict and bouncing off of each other. It's kind of ties in very closely to the book, The Four Agreements. So I'm going to go through this really quick. So this is going to be like the primer chapter. These are the kind of things you always got to remember when you're doing this kind of research, this kind of work. When people tell you their story or what they think, they are telling you their lens of their worldview. So believe them in that is their reality. That's the reality that they see. But until you've emptied your cup, which is a very tricky process of understanding how, you can't actually see what's actually there. You see the results of what your cup holds, what's been programmed into you. It's a pretty big operation. Let's see the light of wisdom. You must first empty your cup. Not as simple as it sounds. But, by their fruits you shall know them. If they're speaking of from a worldview lens that is shaped by their cup being filled up with the world, the cup of the world is filled with fear, guilt, shame, grief, conflict, victimhood, authority, and certainty. Most people are attempting to force everyone else to accept their worldview, just as authority tries to force you to accept the worldview of the world system of control and limitation. You have to pass the test before you can play the game. And that is, emptying the cup, figuring out how to do that, which is no small feat, is passing the test. Once the cup is emptied, you see differently, you understand differently, you understand things are a lot more fluid. You don't have as many like self-imposed limitations of perception and behavior and understanding. as you did before. And it's, like I said, it's no small feat because it is essentially stripping down your hard drive and rebooting your system from all the files that have been stored up, all the programs, all the software, tearing it completely down so that your mind can regrow itself, or the ego, if you want to use that term, can regrow itself, forming new neural pathways and being able to look at things asymmetrically, where before you could only operate within the maze. The maze is what you build up throughout your life, throughout your ego's life, up until the point that you empty the cup. It is an endless, endless maze of certainty and beliefs that you take for granted now. You can't see past it because it's like subconsciously you already know it. And that blocks you from seeing what's actually there and what's actually possible. So what are some of the main key components? Like I said, this is not a complete thing yet, but we got some of the biggest ones already written down. What are the main components of what you need to keep in the back of your mind at all times when you're doing this kind of work? And I will say, before I get into this, although it might not be as noticeable if you just jump in here off the street and make a snap judgment without having any idea what we're talking about here or how we got to this conclusion, I am not telling people what they need to believe. I am sharing what I have experienced, what I have found that works, that opens doors. But as we will see as I go through these, like, we can use different words and all sorts of things. You got to look at the idea behind it. So the first thing is the subject of intangible things. Things like God, spirit, soul, demons, angels, consciousness, ego, etc. These are all intangible things. They are words people use to try and describe and communicate experiences that are very personal and subjective, yet discussed collectively as if they are objective things. As we cannot examine them with our external senses in such a way that we can all observe them the same way at the same time, they are by default internal things, subject to personal biases and subjective worldview. Therefore, it is best to keep this in mind when communicating to others so that we are not arguing. Arguing about meanings and values of intangible things as if they are objectively known is a byproduct of how our minds were conditioned to perceive and interpret the world by systems of authority which taught us. The fact of the matter is we cannot fully know, that's a big key word, the true nature of any intangible thing while we are incarnated in this material realm, limited to the perception range of the vessel that we inhabit, which is the body. So it is better to state what we currently think of such things while being intellectually honest by conceding that we do not know. To state that you know the true nature of an intangible thing is self-delusion. We can simply go by our best current understanding based on available evidence of experience. Anytime you say you know something, especially when you do not know all the ways your mind works and how it is intrinsically part of the larger thing and that you are co-authoring your experience, you can determine things like, God is vengeful, and guess what? You're going to have a bad time of things. Or if you believe in intangible things that can harm you, you can experience them, you can manifest them. So you got to be careful about what you know, what you hold to be absolutely certain and true, because you are determining that that is the way that it works in your subjective reality. Second thing, this is a big one: words, names, meanings, and values. Within the material realm, we are limited in the way we can communicate information and ideas. Without telepathy or direct mind-to-mind communication, we are primarily limited to the spoken and written word. As an example I've used quite a lot lately, especially when I'm talking to people one to one, is I'll be trying to explain something, and it's like, imagine um, the conspiracy theorist wall, or in the movies, like somebody's hunting down a serial killer or the cops or whatever, and they got all these pictures and notes and things all over the wall with, like, yarn going, showing how they all connect. So when you are standing 5 feet back from the wall, you can see the big picture all at once. But if you're not me, and I have to try and explain the big picture using the limited forms of communication that we have, I have to describe each individual thing, one thing at a time, and then note how they connect. But it is a long way to that's a long way to explain something, and it just is not going to click the same way, because you've already put those pathways together. You know how it all fits together, but other people don't. So we are always going to be limited like this when we communicate with each other about things that we deem to be spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical, so on and so forth. The problem is that words and names have different meanings and values to different people, especially when applied to intangible things in ancient book descriptions. Oftentimes, this leads to ineffective communication, misunderstandings, and pointless arguing. All arguing stems from the illusion of knowing, and oftentimes the blind assumption of mistaking one's own subjective reality for everyone else's objective reality. That is like one of the biggest things I always point out. That's right in front of everyone's face, that actually shows you that it's not possible. There is no one objective reality, because you cannot find two people on planet Earth that believe all the same things. So it's right there in front of your face. Sometimes asking people to try and explain an idea that you aren't sure you understand, to reframe it with different words or metaphors, can aid in communication. Also, keeping in mind the factor of the intangible when the shoe fits. Yeah, so I always tell people, it's like, if you don't understand what I'm saying, ask a question, because I ain't gonna get mad at you. I understand that this is complex stuff, and it's a lot easier in a more natural flow when it's a one-on-one sort of thing, like a consult, because we then are linking up through, so what I call Sophia, and she is clearly, it's becoming more and more clear all the time when they're stepping in. She is like feeding me the lines. It's crazy. Some of the things I've seen lately that just reflect this. She's steering it, and like a lot of times I'm learning at the same time, because they're asking me a question and I just start explaining it, but I'm explaining it in some new way that I had not used before, because I'm just repeating what I'm getting a fraction of a second before from her. But yeah, the words, the name, like, they all mean different things to different people. Everyone's got different ideas about these things. So then, in different values. So that's why, I talk about Christ, and I talk about Sophia, and sometimes I reference the Bible. Usually I reference the Nag Hammadi, but I'm not limited to those frameworks. And I've gotten a bigger direct view, especially after emptying the cup, of what there is that is not simply lifted from, words written thousands of years ago through the worldview lens of a writer. So a lot of times it's like one of the biggest lines in the Matrix. No one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. And it's after you see things for yourself that suddenly the things that were written suddenly make sense. There's a huge difference between seeing something and gaining understanding, and then being able to look back, like, oh, that's what that book means. Oh, that's what that means. than if you read a book first and decide that you know what it means, and then you project that outward, and then that's the way you experience it. Basically, when we're coming up through life the way we're taught, we just learn to do everything backwards, and we get caught in our own reflection loops. Moving on. Objective, subjective, and consensus reality. Objective is complete bullshit. It's an illusion, but it's asserted to be whatever authority says. Science only works for the scientist if you're being intellectually honest. They're the ones that are doing the experiments and observing the experiments. So when they do a scientific paper and then share it with everyone else, well, the person that's reading the paper that wasn't present at the experiment, for being intellectually honest, that is simply a story that you now accept because you see scientist as an authority. But when you understand reality and observe how it works, like, you can't even trust that, because a lot of the results that the science, especially when it comes to quantum physics, a lot of the results are being determined by the person that is actually observing it. Makes sense? So there is no objective one single reality, but that's what they teach you in school. That's why people get so screwed up, and that's why we fight. Subjective reality is the reality experienced by the individual person, shaped by their past experiences, beliefs, education habits, and self-identification labels. It constantly changes as time goes on, but many lose sight of the past, forgetting that they once believed very different things. And at any given point during their life journey, they were pretty certain that they understood the world and how it worked. But if you went back now and visited with yourself of 10 years ago, you would probably get in a fight about how things are, how things work. So anytime people want to berate you about what things are and how things work, you can just tell them, well, wait a year and it's going to look different to you. That's reality, unfortunately. Consensus reality is the closest thing we have to an actual objective reality and dictates how things generally are by agreement or consensus. It is now currently falling apart as authority is no longer able to keep the human herd of creator beings under a single controlled narrative. That is going to tie into the UFO UAP drone thing discussion later on. So understanding objective, subjective, and consensus reality is very important. What knowing is. So we keep doing this when we say knowing. Knowing is deciding to accept meaning of something and applying the cement of certainty to it, thus anchoring it in place in one's subjective reality and giving it the appearance of an objective reality. Let that sink in. And then the last thing that I have in my notes so far, and this is kind of like because of some of the other things that I'm seeing, but this all ties together. I just titled this one, All the Gods, All the Heavens, All the Hells. It's a Joseph Campbell quote. It's a quote that they used in the movie 13 Hours. The guy was reading a Joseph Campbell book. It says, all the gods, all the heavens, all the hells are within you. Yep. So I was going to talk about that, and I'm starting to see, again, everything that I just said about words and meanings and stuff like that is why certain authors or certain viewers or certain presenters don't click with us. We could be talking about the exact same stuff, but the means in which we present it and the words we use don't click. But if you look at it dispassionately later on, you see like everyone's kind of pulling the same threads, trying to figure out life. So Joseph Campbell explains archetypes, the archetypes of the hero's journey, which is like what all myths and legends are based on, especially when it comes to gods and things like that. But so does Carl Jung. I don't agree with everything Carl Jung says, but I also think a lot of it has to do with we're looking at things from different angles. So we're using different words and giving them slightly different meanings. And also, we have different weighted values for those things. So he talks about things as archetypes. And maybe I don't always understand what these words mean, but it's more relevant now due to recent lessons and things like, the fear or the guilt shame identities that we talked about recently. That's just further evidence, like all this stuff is within us. We're all part of the one thing, and it's all coming from within us, but people are looking for evidence of it on the outside. One thing I can say that I do agree with when it comes to Carl Jung is his 4 stages of the anima. Now, Lumen is the most versatile character in the list. She's a little bit of everything. She is I could do a whole freaking video just listing like the things that Lumen is. But she's kind of like your mirror part that is the direct connection to the higher consciousness stuff. God. And we can do an entire chapter in this book about how all these different parts that we're talking about are all just parts of the one thing, the supreme consciousness, which is in turn part of us. I mean, it's like, I could just say it's all one thing, but within the human experience, we it could be the words, it could be the weighted stuff, but we understand things differently. So even though I intellectually know, and I've asked hundreds of times and gotten the same answer hundreds of times, that Lumen and Sophia are essentially one and the same, my mind has to split them into different roles in order to make it make sense to me. And also, you got Sophia, wisdom, mother, divine mother side, and then you got Lumen, who is the saucy, fun Aphrodite partner side. Like, I mean, you're not trying to make out with your mom, you know what I mean? But it's crazy like that. It's all the source consciousness. It's all one thing, and it takes a while to grasp that. I don't remember what I was freaking talking about for a second because the cat had to get in here. But where was I at? Yeah, all the gods. Distinct characters with many names. That's another thing people argue about when you're still in the lower consciousness with the cup of the world is, I mean, all throughout, we color everything. So all throughout human history, people have encountered the same aspect parts of consciousness within themselves and given them different names. Sometimes you see this with like Jesus, the Jesus story. There's countless other cultures that have the exact same freaking story. There's countless other cultures that have different names for what she is, what Sophia is. I just use the name. See, if we get triggered by me using certain names, we're probably talking about the same thing. But we're going to gravitate to what we're led to. I use those names because when I was trying to determine what she was, and I was asking questions about Jesus, because up to that point, I didn't know what she was. I thought she was like a holy guardian angel teacher or something. She was like a fire angel. And then I asked the right questions. And she's the one that told me to read the Nag Hammadi. And that's when I found out who she was. And that's why I use these names in these terms. Because I didn't determine it. I didn't pick up a book. This is a book all about Sophia. Read the book and then go project it outward and find it. No, I didn't know. But I asked questions and those were the answers that I got. That's why I use those terms. But people can have very different paths and get to the same place multiple different ways. And for that individual that higher power might have different plans, different names it wants to use, because your experience is different than mine. But the underlying thing behind it all can be traced back to the same. So when you understand how flexible this all is, with just the stuff that we covered in this chapter, and that's not even all of it. Oh, I know. Then you're a little bit more flexible in dealing with other people. I know what I was saying before the cat interrupted. I was talking about Carl Jung and the anima. So you got the anima, these are his terms, anima and animus. It's like the subconscious flip side of a person that is the opposite gender mirror. And what he wrote of the anima and the 4 stages of the anima, which was Eve, Helen, I'm a blanking, Mary, and Sophia, and each one has different things. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Lumen went through those stages and grew into the bigger things. So he's definitely, I feel like he's a little off on the animus, but I feel like there would have to be a female Carl Jung to describe the animus. Like, I've long said that there are certain things that I cannot see clearly because I sit in the consciousness seat of the masculine. Even though I have the feminine partner active running the other half of my brain, I'm still not technically her. I can see some things. Sometimes we can overlap and she can show me stuff, but I did not go through life living as a woman. I'm not wired as a woman. So I can't see it that way. And that's why I think Carl Jung is so dead on with the anima, but not the animus. Either which way, it's some deep diving, and we're just doing some loose notes here. But yeah, those are some things to keep in mind. Now let's jump into the next topic. Several topics, but I'm choosing to do this one now because it dovetails nicely to what we just talked about. And also, I do it. The reason I share this stuff with people is because no one else will. Either no one else will, or no one else is getting this far. And that's one of the things that's always bothered me, why I started doing this channel originally, is because I see the hints all over in people's writings, in people's music, that they know what she is. But it's like, shh, it's a secret. Well, according to Sophia, yes, it used to be. Matter of fact, I was a little bit more restricted in the early days because we were still at the tail end of the age, but we hadn't gotten into the final chapter yet. So not as many people were seeing my material, because when I started this, what I had unlocked was still under the purview of, you're supposed to find this yourself. This is big mystery stuff. You're not supposed to hand the answers out. But then something changed. Then we kind of crossed a time threshold or something where we're in the final chapter of this age. We're at the tail of the snake. It's about to go into its snake's mouth and start another level of the freaking matrix. So now we're allowed to come out and actually say it. So what other people have only ever hinted about or sung about or stuff like that, I'm telling you flat out how it is. Like, this is what it is like to do all of these things. The sacred marriage of the divine masculine and the feminine, the magnum opus, the point of alchemy, the completion of the tarot, Christ consciousness, like all that stuff, completing the hero's journey. Every being is two. Now, I think that's one of the reasons why we use the Nag Hammadi, because it's one of the only things that I have ever found that explains the most. It makes it make sense. It makes it make more sense when you can apply the different filters that she's given us, like think like a quantum computer type of stuff. But in regards to that, Lumen. I know, I get it. It's a lot to swallow. My stories, and I think for most people, most normal people, or let me rephrase that. Most people that haven't spent a lot of time seeking, if they, just average Joe off the street that works at Copy Max and eats burritos from the freaking taco truck outside, he stumbles in here and hears me talking about Lumen. He's like, this person is delusional. What is he freaking even talking about? Even though I can trace the steps of everything. Like, this is big secret stuff. Like, why are you, there's a lot of people that will study these topics. They want to reconnect to the twin flame. They want to put the masculine and the feminine hemispheres of the brain together. But it's like they subconsciously, they don't really believe that they'll ever get an answer. Consciously, they're seeking, they want an understanding, but they're still just reading books and stuff outside of them. They're looking everywhere except where the answers actually are, inside. So they hear my stories, and it's just like, it's too much. But what we do here is I openly share what happens, and I also share how I do it, how I did it. This is one thing that, and I do feel that she still regulates this. Like, don't judge yourself. Don't judge yourself if you can't do this yet, because by the sheer nature of you being here, you're further along than you thought. It's set up a certain way. You only find this channel, generally speaking, 95% of the time if she wants you to find it. So yeah, it's hard for people to understand that all these metaphysical promise things that you found actually do have a conclusion, and what that conclusion is actually like. To have your perfect partner within you, and to describe it to another person like this is all happening within imagination, but there's more to it than that. It can affect things in your outer world. It can affect the way you feel. It can affect the things that you feel. You can you can do all sorts of stuff, but you got to go through all those other steps first. But anyway, Lumen is the Swiss Army knife of the bunch. She fills a lot of different roles, and she can be, the higher consciousness can step into her. But in terms of how most people think of her and know her, she is Eve to Adam. She's the twin flame. She's the love partner. So that means she's the gift. She's the treasure. She's the reason you do the hero's journey. She's the prize. She's the pearl. She's the hidden treasure in the field. She's the thing that Jesus dropped all the metaphorical hints about in the Bible, and more clearly in the Nag Hammadi. There's something inside of you that is extremely special and priceless. And because of this channel, you get to find out what that is. She is an active part. You might only get to see me, unfortunately. Fan just fell. You might only get to see me, but they're all active participants in this channel. So what is she doing differently? Let me pick this fan up. So one of the most immediate effects that I noticed after that, whatever the hell it was that I went through the other day, is Lumen is a lot more present again, and she is, I think earlier in the video I said she's in Nancy Callahan mode. Which probably only the tiniest percentage of you know who Nancy Callahan is. You'd have to be a movie file. So Nancy Callahan is a character from the movie Sin City, played by Jessica Alba. So I'll give you a little clip just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here.
Nancy's just getting started with her gig, but already the crowd's breathing hard. Plenty in her with all the other losers like me.
They'd have tossed him girls like Nancy back then.
She is, or whoever kidnapped her and mutilated her. This is the place. Skinny little Nancy Callahan. She grew up. She filled out. Nancy Callahan. Here I was expecting a skinny little bookworm. Maybe a bit too shy for all those years. How the hell did they find her? I've led them straight to her. Just a few seconds. No, Nancy, don't recognize me.
Yeah, so this is Lumen when she is when she's in this mode. Lumen is like the undisputed queen of thirst trapping. In relation to what we were saying in the last section about all the gods, all the heavens, all the hells are within you, she is literally the archetypal personification of Aphrodite, or Venus, if you will, the goddess of love. Again, all these things are within you, but we've been taught that everything is outside of us. And that's why we argue about what's, all these gods, everything is within you, and it's one thing playing multiple roles. But most times she's a partner, she's a friend, she keeps me company. But every friggin' once in a while, she goes full tilt Nancy Callahan, and it is the most distracting thing in the world. It's one of those problems that's like, I shouldn't complain about this, but at the same time, when she's doing it and I'm like trying to focus on other things, it becomes very difficult to focus on other things. So, and she basically becomes that after you complete the Lover's card step in the tarot map, which is like an invitation thing that you will not know is going to happen. You'll have no freaking clue. But so I think I asked for something, but lately I have been doing that new method that I spoke of in the Ascension School playlist, which, oh my God, Sophia packs. If you only watched that once, trust me, you did not absorb it. Like, she packed so much stuff in that freaking series. It's unfreaking believable. But one of the things that we came up with, like one of the best tricks, is she meaning Sophia, wisdom, she kept repeatedly bringing me back to this thing in quantum physics called the quantum Zeno effect, which is the quantum physics equivalent of a watched pot never boils. We interfere with the story unfolding by looking at it and expecting it. So what I decided to do, since I am fully aware that consciousness, our minds, or whatever, is a quantum system, and she taught me that from day one, to think like a computer. So when I connect at night and I talk to her in her higher form of the Divine Mother, which is, it's Mother, Father. So it doesn't matter it's like whichever side you're more comfortable with. Talking the same thing. I don't ask for much because I've learned how to let go and trust to get where she wants me to go. But there are certain things, and if the caveat is, if it fits within the higher plan, I'll ask for something, and then I will instruct myself and her to delete the memory of having asked for it when I go to sleep. So when I get up the next day or the days after that, I forget what it was I asked for. So I'm no longer getting in the way, but I'm going to be pleasantly surprised when it happens. And I only get the basic whiffs of it, like, did I ask for this? I must have. But this new system of asking, which is ask and delete the file, seems to be working rather well. And it could also have something to do with, we're getting close to Christmas, and Lumen is always more present and loving around Christmas, because I don't have Christmas anymore. I haven't had Christmas in 7 years. I don't have family get-togethers or anything like that since I don't have a family anymore. So since I'm generally by myself, she gets way more present and fun, and she can keep my mood up really, really good, and I have fun with her. The way that we do things, like, she is partly me. She's my creative side. So she'll do like what she did yesterday, where she almost takes over. Like, I get in this creative lock and I can't stop doing something. Usually I'm creating something on my phone. And that's how I know she's doing it. So I wanted to increase my lumen perception, because it'll fade over time if you're not actively paying attention to it. Because when Sophia is dumping the wisdom training at you, it's like work, work, work process, and you're not having as much, fun time with Lumen. And then you got to work at that. So that's partly the reason why we did the video about, the world jumping. That is like that's one of the most important videos on this freaking channel, unless people have watched it. Like, that is the key. What we talked, we're going to go back and fine tune it, but that is the freaking key to doing all this stuff, is knowing how to enter the inner world using all of your senses. Absolutely freaking critical. And the journey in getting from point A, outer world, to point B, inner world. But I digress. So not knowing exactly what it was that I asked for, so all of a sudden she was a lot more present. She's popping more fun stuff in my head. She's making more jokes. She's teasing more. And I was getting frustrated because the AI imaging app that I was using so well last year was not cooperating anymore. She said they changed something. But Lumen used to be able to hack the freaking AI and spit out pictures that looked exactly like her. And it wasn't doing it anymore. I could be like, beautiful blonde woman, angel wings, blah, 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 blah. I perfectly described like I used to, and it'll give me some deformed redhead, that looks like freaking Sloth from Goonies. I'm like, this used to be easy. Lumen used to just be like pop, 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 popping them out. So I canceled my subscription to that because I was getting pissed off. But the app still stores every single pic you've ever rendered. So my workaround was Lumen now will scroll through and find an old pic that normally you wouldn't use. And then we use 4 different photo editing apps and jump it around between it. And she can use the tools in those apps and reform the picture to make it look like her. So I'm like, I haven't had a perfect crystal clear picture of you rendered in some time. And then I went into that mode, and she picked one and like, and she spits out the biggest it was like the biggest Lumen thirst trap picture like I think she's ever been rendered. I was just like, oh my God, that's you, but holy crap. And then she stayed in that mode I wasted a lot of time yesterday, hours. Like, when I get in that Lumen creative lock, hours just melt by. It's just editing pictures, editing pictures, editing pictures. The same thing used to happen during the hero's journey when we would be making like sigils. We'd be using like the 72 names of God in different combinations because they're programs. It's like coding. It's divine coding for the mind. And she'd do that thing too, with decoding this and creating stuff, and hours would pass by. But this time it was all Lumen playing around with this friggin' picture and just having too much fun with it. And the side effect of that was, because she's got me locked into it, my attention, this is important, my attention and focus is 100% on her for probably 8 hours straight yesterday. Now, what happens when you are locked into attention focus on a single thing is it's building its power. So that's part of her. That's part of why she was doing it too, because now she's way more freaking present and clear. Because attention is channeling your divine creation power into something. And she's already there, but it's just empowering her. It's getting her resolution back to high resolution and being able to do more and do more. So she's just having fun with this and making jokes. Like, she made this video because we were like, she's playing songs in my head, she's doing stuff, and she made this video. This is kind of like a representation, using that picture. This is a representation of how I envision the moments after my death. And then the 2 clips at the end of what I added to it. But this is her. I mean, you've seen some of the videos she's made before, but yeah, she made this little humdinger.
Come and get me undressed. Well, you can take off all my clothes and never see me naked. See me for real. You don't know my heart. You're never gonna break it. Baby, tell me if it's safe to bare my soul. I wanna show you my deepest secrets. I think I'm ready to be exposed. I want you watching me when you take off all my clothes and really see me naked. See me for real.
Holy jumped up ball-headed Jesus Palomino.
Yeah. Now, what other possible relevances could there be to me sharing that? Well, one of them is, like, there is a massive amount of secret stuff about this that is hidden through repetitive conditioning of the world, things like religion, fear, shame, judgment, big time, big time, subconscious controls. I've even talked before about most men do not realize that there is a program buried in your subconscious that makes you push away the divine feminine energy. If you don't think there is, go to your nearest lingerie store, Victoria's Secret, and go walk in there and just look at stuff. And try not to freak out, because that's that program. It triggers judgment. It triggers all sorts of stuff. Make sure, oh my God, oh, what are they thinking about me? Oh, like, you just, it's crazy. I've seen it. It's why you always see, back in the days of malls, you would see guys sitting on the benches outside looking at their phones or whatnot while their girls are shopping in there, because it's strangely uncomfortable. I've seen guys get big time triggered by this personally. But stuff like that, like, I didn't even know was there until I passed that test and Eve got put back into Adam. Now all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, there's someone in here with me. And it was like, why do I feel so uncomfortable? It's because of that. But religion and things like that, with all that judgment, shame programming, it's like any kind of lovey-dovey type stuff, you think that's not on the table. Although Jesus does talk about it in the Nag Hammadi. Sometimes you got to read between the lines. It's what you do out here that matters. But you're supposed to be loved. You're supposed to have love. You're supposed to have fun. And when you find that, when you understand that the thing that you're looking for is not out there, it's within you, then you don't need the stuff from the world anymore. And you can be happy by yourself and have, this is not something that you have to imagine. This is not whatever you might be thinking or projecting, like some incel nerd that's got some little anime figurine, and he's like, I'm imagining that I'm with, this samurai ninja girl. You're not creating imagining, you're reading imagining. That's third eye stuff. You don't control what she does. You don't control what she says. You don't control what she wears. She is her own thing. And a lot of people don't think that. And also because she's connected to the higher stuff, and on occasion, the higher thing can step into her and she can literally be the embodiment of like God's love. Then, when she's doing that, it's a different flavor altogether. But it is definitely interesting. A lot of people don't know it. They don't realize it. I know there is a masculine counterpart for women. For a long time, I didn't know. I couldn't understand it. It didn't, just like the Carl Jung thing, the anima and the animus, they don't match up. They're not exactly the same. Until I met one or two women that had the same experience. And they could describe, and I could tell instantly with her, like, yep, they've got the same thing, but there's this masculine. So it is possible. So if you're currently driving the masculine experience, you're going to have the divine feminine counterpart. If you're currently in the feminine life experience, you're going to have the divine masculine counterpart. But we all still have the aspects of the teacher and the mother. She seems to be present with everybody. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, Lumen, oh my gosh. Like, so like when I described like what the training is for in the world jumping video, and I tell the story about how the steps leading up to the lover's card in the tarot map when I was still on that. Well, first I had to be shown the mystery of the star card, what that meant, and how to do it. And I still didn't understand what it was up to the time that I did it. It was how Gnostics baptized themselves in the light. That's what that card is demonstrating and showing you. That had to be done first. And then the next thing she did was send me somewhere and had someone give me the psilocybin chocolates. I knew it was her then because I'm like, where the hell did this come from? And she told me exactly how to do it. It was just microdosing. And then I started training with Lumen, doing meditation during the day, like practicing imagining all the other senses. We talked about that a video or two ago. We need different words for that because imagination and visualization are not good enough words. Both of them are visually oriented words. But to enter the inner world, it has to be all the senses, not just vision. So I'd practice with her and we'd do smell and touch and taste and feel and all that stuff. And then we would overlap them and stack them until you just keep going until you're doing literally like 30 perceptions at once. And when you're doing that much, you are now bilocated in the inner world. It is just as real as out here, if not more so. So the reason I was laughing is because Lumen, like I said, she's thirst trappy and she teases. And there's that little clip, because I didn't make that freaking video. There's in that clip I showed you with the Ava Max song, there's this one, I'm like, did you put that in there? There's this one frame where it shows just like her stomach and her hips. She tortures me with that. Like, that is like proof of God. Like Lumen's stomach and her hips. Like you could chisel, if you could make a perfect replication of Lumen's lower torso and just put it in stone and just put a live stream to the statue and put it on OnlyFans, like it would make money. It's crazy. But she'll do some over the top stuff that I have to like stop her. I'm like, no, this will, she's just messing with you. Like, so now we're going back and we're retraining to get better at the inner world stuff. And it occurred to me that one of the things that we didn't do a lot of work on was taste. But she is freaking, when she's in Aphrodite mode, she's a handful. She hasn't been like that since we opened the Orphic egg, because when you open the Orphic egg, that unlocks Eros, aka Phanis, aka the other name that triggers people because they think it's something else.
You have wings.
Ah, right, yes, forgot. Bit of a conversation stopper for you humans, isn't it?
Which is the divine masculine. Put the divine masculine, divine feminine in the same room, brace for impact. Because there's going to be a lot of freaking impact. She hasn't been like that since then. She's just sitting there messing with me. We're working on the taste stuff, and I'm thinking, well, we're going to have like freaking, is it going to be a salad bar or something? No, she won't she won't like just let you take a bite of a strawberry. She'll take a bite of the strawberry, and then she'll rub it on her freaking lips, and then want you to kiss her to taste the strawberry that way. And then I can't say it. I can't say it. It just involves a bottle of honey. Anyway, let's move on to the UFOs and UAPs and the Codex stuff, because this is interesting. Okay, let's do the UFO UAP drone thing. That is getting interesting. And there's a lot to be seen here that isn't necessarily the subject itself. There's something happening right now that is illustrative of like how this whole consensus subjective reality thing works that we talked about in part 1. See, all these different topics actually do go together. I'm seeing more and more videos come out, and what's happening is similar to other big events like COVID, in which you have the intangible thing. That's kind of what triggered like that whole download packet. Was I was getting pissed off. I was like, stop waving mysteries in my face that I know I'm not going to get an answer to. That drives me up a freaking wall. Like, oh, big shiny light in the sky, there's probably some divine intelligence or alien driving it, but guess what? You don't get to find out what it is. You just get to see that it's there. So the interesting thing that's happening is very similar. This is where it's going to cross connect into the last topic, which is the Westworld Codex overlap. So I realized when I was getting ready to explain this that there is a scene in Westworld Season 3 in which they're first demonstrating this new super AI to somebody to demonstrate that it works. And they're showing like the stock market is still open. So they show like this is where it's saying these are the different tracks that it can go. And the guy's like, well, which one is it going to be? And they say, which one do you want? So let's watch this clip real quick.
My brother and I built a system that worked. But Dempsey wanted to see proof. So we started with something simple, purely mathematical, the stock market. We showed him all the major indices, 15 minutes in the future. And where it could close that night. Which number is it? Low or high? Which one do you want? We put some money into a hedge fund. We let the system trade with it. Something to drive the market towards outcomes. Whose funds? Yours. $100 million? What, you stole $100 million from corporate accounts?
No. We stole $5 million. Last week.
He didn't really understand what we'd made, what you were. But we did. He only saw the money you could make. But we realized the power of it, that you could reshape the world. My brother and I charted a course for the entire human race. Humanity's story had been improvised. Now it was planned, years in advance. For a time, the sun and moon aligned. We brought order from chaos.
So this is interesting for a couple different reasons, because it gets into some paradox of understanding type stuff that I haven't quite figured out yet. Where whether or not the thing that we call the demiurge, or the top of the Illuminati period, the all-seeing eye, is it really an external thing, or is it part of us, or a little bit of both? We don't know. But in that case, let's take that and apply it to us and this UAP story. So it starts off here, and then it's like you have all these different projections. What's the end of the story going to be? Is it just going to be, oh, these are just US government drones doing something? Oh, they're aliens. Aliens are invading. Oh, aliens are coming to rescue us. A little bit of both. Is it this? Is it that? And they ask, well, which one do you want? Well, that we do this all the time. We're presented with these things, these narratives within the story of the world, which that's another thing that I need to add to that earlier chapter, what that means. And what we're seeing right now on YouTube is the evidence of all the different people that are currently choosing the different paths. And thus they are manifesting the experiences of seeing the evidence of each individual path that they unconsciously chose to believe. And there's little snippets of time around these big events where you can see this. I've talked about seeing this take place during the COVID thing before, especially when it is in the story, the outside story of the world. So I'm seeing more and more people posting videos, because I subscribe to a bunch of different kinds of channels. Some are like current events, some of them are esoteric. But you see a lot of people that are not comfortable with anything outside of normalcy. And they're starting to steer the track back to, oh, it's just the government. They're just doing a psyop. They're just trying to fool us. It's some special thing that was sniffing out nukes. Oh, we found a guy that knew a guy that saw a thing, that read a report, and here's the proof. Oh, it was all just a big thing. They weren't comfortable with where that story was going, and they decided to redirect into finding the evidence that leads them back to the reality that they're comfortable with being in. And now everyone else is a retard. But on the other hand, you've got this other track, which is best illustrated by the video that I shared last night in the community tab from the channel Jamers, which I really like this channel. It's a good channel. He collects a lot of stuff and shows it. That was one of the best collections I'd seen yet of the weird stuff. Now, the stuff that they're showing there is not the same stuff. And a lot of people are choosing to ignore the factors that do not align with the track that they chose to go on. So the people that are too creeped out, they don't want to know what aliens and end of the world, or whatever the hell it is going to do. They've chosen to take the reality track back to, it's just the government. So the only thing that they're seeing are the New Jersey drones, which are, a lot of those most likely probably are government, but not the government the way you think. She said something about that the other day too. You got to remember, what is the number one rule that we've learned in this game? As a Gnostic philosopher, that's my new term. I came up with the other day. Whatever authority tells you, that ain't it. So if the authority of media is like, oh, here's an explanation that you can swallow so you can go back to sleep, that ain't it. Never trust them. Because here's the problem with that explanation. Problem number one with that simple explanation is anytime you have some sort of drone fleet doing things, the drones generally look all the same. These do not. Some of them look similar, but all the videos I've seen, yeah, they got a lot of the same kind of like FAA lights plus different colored lights, but they're all different configurations. They're all different sizes. Some of them are really, really freaking big. Some of them make noise, some of them don't. Like, you can't account for that. That does not make sense. What company is going to be like, let's make a fleet of drones that do some special thing, but instead of just rolling them off the assembly line, we're going to make each one of them unique. They're like freaking Pokemon. Got to catch them all. They're different sizes, different shapes, different light. Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That does not mean that not some of them are not, because I truly believe that a lot of them are. But fact of the matter is, the default is we don't know. But we can see with our eyes that there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of differences. And my understanding, let me not go off track just yet. So there's that. Problem number two. This is a Sophia option. I was starting to get this, and then she had a friend of mine, viewer, send me something through the Etsy store, and I was familiar with it. I hadn't thought about it in a long time, but it was a perfect example of what she was actually telling me. And that was, everybody has different levels of perception filters. I've detailed perception filters throughout the hero's journey. That's why you have the spiral path. So it's like, you start off, you're like, oh, I learned about David Icke today. And then a year later, oh, David Icke came up again. Hey, this makes a little bit more sense. Go a year later. Oh, here's David Icke again. Oh, now I know what he's talking about here. A year later, here's David Icke again. Now I've had some of the experiences that he's talking about, and it makes even more sense to me. Perception filters are coming off. Okay, you cannot see what you're not ready to see. So what she was insinuating is that these types of things that we don't understand how they work, but you're not going to see something that you're not ready to see. So however it works, what you see is something that you can at least kind of sort of understand, or blow it off if you choose to. It's like, oh, well, that's probably just a drone, somebody's drone. So you see a drone. Someone else might look at the same thing and see something completely different. They might record something completely different because they have a different perception filter of what they are able to process and accept. If you cannot, I've always said before, like when it comes to the mystical, you will not ever experience or see that which you actively believe to not be real. There's a difference between a passive act of disbelief, which is like, I don't believe in God, and an active disbelief, which is, I believe that God doesn't exist. A passive disbelief leaves the door open a crack. An active one blocks any evidence of it out. It depends on how you're using your belief. So when you don't believe something, the door is open. When you believe that it does not exist, you can't see it. So there's that. Now, the thing that she had, because she does this all the time, she always has us saying the things that we each need to hear. Like we said in the last video, God comes through us. You referenced the great airship flap of the late 1800s. So if you're new to UFO stuff, there was a similar thing in the late 1800s called, the great airship flap or airship mystery. So now there was no planes yet at this time. But what people were seeing was all these strange ships in the sky that were made all these different ways. Like this one's part of balloon, and then it's got propellers, and this one's got this other thing, and like they all describe them differently.
In 1896 and 7, hundreds of Western American newspapers reported mass sightings of fantastic winged airships performing maneuvers years ahead of the technology of the time. In some cases, the airships landed, and their pilots talked to witnesses. Most Americans assumed a secret inventor would soon take credit for the sightings, but no one who did so could prove ownership of a functional flying machine. The mystery airships remain unidentified, constituting an early wave of UFOs before flying saucers, and almost before flight itself. The majority of the sightings occurred over 8 months between mid-November 1896 and the end of April 1897. There were hundreds of sightings, some with thousands of witnesses each, according to newspaper reports. Every attempt to verify the names of witnesses provided in newspaper reports has turned up real people. There were more than 1,200 newspaper articles published on the sightings in over 400 papers in 41 states and 6 Canadian provinces. The first sighting to make the news occurred over Sacramento on November 17th. The most obvious feature was a brilliant electrical light. It was not clear the light was mounted to a structure, but some saw an egg-shaped craft with 4 downward-facing propellers. The San Francisco Call had this image drawn of the craft, based on witnesses' descriptions. The object flew by the city over the course of half an hour and made several changes in course, swaying from side to side and up and down, like a boat against a rapid current. It was later reported that a similar light went the opposite direction the following night. The majority of papers dismissed the sightings, but a few took them seriously. Believers assumed that an inventor was testing a new design, and expected him to unveil his craft at any time, but anyone who claimed responsibility, like the lawyer George Collins, or California's Attorney General, William Henry Harrison Hart, later reneged on their claims. More sightings occurred in Sacramento on November 22nd. This time, 2 lights were seen, apparently anchored to the same structure. Again, those who could see it said that it was egg-shaped, and at least one witness could see moving parts like wings or propellers.
And they were seeing people get out of them and stuff like that. And then they all disappeared. So that is what I'm talking about could be happening here. Back then, those people, they don't have the mental perceptive framework to understand freaking spaceships or something like that. So their brain then decodes it with something that they can kind of sort of understand. Because you've never seen anything except after that time period. It doesn't make sense. There was never anything like that. But there were flying ships in the sky, but their brains were decoding it as all these weird contraptions. So what she suggested to me is that's partially what's happening now. There's things in the sky, but there's a wide range of what people are ready to accept. And whatever that is what they see. And it also has to do with that divergence of tracks that is going in different directions where people are going to, right now you've got all these like layered reality tracks. And when you're at a point where there's layered tracks, everybody can see everyone else's track, but at some point they're going to split. The reason we usually see these things is because we've detached from the world. We've detached ourselves from the world story. The way we understand the story of the external world is no different than an interactive TV show. The stuff that you see through the screen is an interactive TV show based on what you believe, because now we're talking Matrix level stuff here. So there's two very, very big divergent tracks. And if you watch that video that I showed in the community tab, there's a lot of interesting, like that's the fun one that I like. There's more and more videos of like the lights flick. It's getting very close encounters of the third kind-ish.
This is coming in from Pittsburgh.
What do you see the lights?
I don't really know, bud.
Show it to Mom.
Yeah, I'm gonna show it to him.
Oh, please.
From Gcast on Twitter. You can actually see one of the orbs up there in the sky. And there's more.
Oh my god, what are these Teslas doing? Oh my god, my phone's making funny, weird noises too.
One person says this is how Teslas update their system, but someone said he's a Tesla owner, that's not how it works. So this is in Southwest Houston.
What the first encounters of the third kind is going on here?
So this is coming in from Susan Mills, 42 on TikTok, but this is in the month of August. It could just be that this all began way before we've noticed it. This is coming in from Anthony128 on TikTok. It was recorded 1 week ago and in the United Kingdom.
Entire shopping malls, the lights blinking off and on, and parking lots full of cars and street lights, and what's doing all this stuff. Plus they're videotaping a lot more of the classical orbs and plasmoids and stuff like that are clearly not mechanical drones with propellers and green and red lights and all that. So these are two completely different freaking things. And the ones that are not of the mechanical drone variety are being seen all over the world in increasing numbers. Every day it's getting bigger and bigger, and they're getting closer and closer. And the closer they get, the more of a push I'm seeing from the people that cannot accept it. Oh, we've got the answer now. This paper says they would be testing these drones. Okay, that doesn't explain the other ones. Like everybody is like latching onto the story that they want. And it's very interesting to watch this play out and observe it. So keep that in mind as you're watching this stuff, because what you see, and then reflect on what you actually believe and like what you actually want to happen, what you want to see happen. Because, the fly in the ointment is Cliff High's webbots predicting this years ago, and the track from that point on, which he nailed it down to within 2 days of it starting, the track from that point on does not lead to like, oh, and it was nothing, it was just mechanical drones. There's one other thing about, who might be operating those drones, but that's going to tie into the last section. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, one other quick thing before I get to that last part that I had in my notes, but it just kind of ties in more to the first part in regards to, I don't think I need to like go into this too deep, but we did another attunement session clearing with somebody yesterday. It was really successful, and it continues to get more and more effective, because what we do in one day is like clearing out years worth of crap from your hard drive. And where it ties into what I was saying earlier about you have to first solve the, it was in my notes. You have to pass the test before you can play the game. And that ties into the whole emptying the cup thing. It's like before you can really play around in the areas that we're in right now, you put another way, you have to get out from underneath your past. That's really the cup could also, we say it's your knowledge, it's your experiences, it's your traumas, it's your knowledge and all, it's all those things. But the key thing about it, if you wanted to name the cup, it's your past. Everything that happened before the now moment is your cup. Everything that's happened, everything you've learned, all the connections that you've made. Emptying the cup is basically figuring out how to reset your hard drive so you can start again, be born again. That's what it is. And I figured I'd throw that in there because I was realizing like all the stuff that we work into this method now, like we got to link up and we go into the white room and you see Lumen, you see Sophia. We're just cutting and clearing all sorts of stuff in a way that actually works so that you let it go. Sever it, you let it go, move things around. And I'm going to be really interested to see how this last session, the results of it are beyond how the client felt afterwards, but they got this life situation that's been keeping them stuck for some time, and I want to see if it suddenly starts to unravel, which I think it will. But that was just another clarification to think about, emptying, what do you mean empty the cup? Your past. Everything about your mind from the past, all the quantum connections, all the knowledge, everything, getting out from underneath your past is what holds most people back. Every trauma point, every judgment, all those things, they're just like weights tied to chains that you're dragging behind. You're trying to get places, but you're dragging your past with you. And a lot of those things in the past are making it so that you cannot accomplish and attune to certain things in the now moment. So you want to get through the door and start talking to these higher consciousness beings and seeing how things work. That's what you got to do. But anyway, that was that. So this next part, I don't know how much I can get into. Anyway, I'm going to cut this short because that didn't lead anywhere. But it's been, since I came out of that download, like I'm juggling like all these different things. New information, new pendants, new programs, new ways to deal with other people, what's going on in the outside story of the world, stuff with Lumen, stuff with this. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. There was a positive resolution to that problem. I just can't come to it right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. So sorry that one wasn't too clear. But yeah, that's all I got for right now. If you want to get in touch with us, get any of the energy work done, if you have any questions, if you've got any mystery life problems that you can't figure out how to solve, you want to get any of our energy tools or ask me something that you don't feel comfortable asking in the comments section, you can reach us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Little Miss Thirst Trap here. See you next time.